Today we're going to talk about some options for doing unilateral pressing. When you're working with a new group of clients, especially if they don't have press-ups yet, you're going to find that sometimes your pressing options are relatively limited. You'll also see that in all populations, you might find people who have a big disparity or imbalance in their left and right side. So unilateral pressing is really nice because you can ensure that both sides are getting the same stimulation. You don't have to worry about the dominant side taking over as you would in a traditional barbell press or maybe a press up. So three options that I'm going to talk about today are the kettlebell floor press, which you can progress into a quarter get up, then some variation of a log press or angled press or what's called a landmine press. There's loads of variations for that. I'll talk to you about a few ones that you can use just finding a log or a fallen tree. And then finally the pendulum press, which is another nice variation of an angled press. For both of these will help build vertical pressing strength as well. They're at an angle, so they're not quite full horizontal and not quite vertical. Usually end up somewhere around here, so you do get some of that deltoid engagement. And then with the kettlebell floor press, if you turn it into a quarter get up, you can also get some more deltoids and shoulder into it. Today we're going to talk about some options for doing unilateral pressing. When you're working with a new group of clients, especially if they don't have press-ups yet, you're going to find that sometimes your pressing options are relatively limited. You'll also see that in all populations, you might find people who have a big disparity or imbalance in their left and right side. So unilateral pressing is really nice because you can ensure that both sides are getting the same stimulation. You don't have to worry about the dominant side taking over as you would in a traditional barbell press or maybe a press up. So three options that I'm going to talk about today are the kettlebell floor press, which you can progress into a quarter get up, then some variation of a log press or angled press or what's called a landmine press. There's loads of variations for that. I'll talk to you about a few ones that you can use just finding a log or a fallen tree. And then finally the pendulum press, which is another nice variation of an angled press. For both of these will help build vertical pressing strength as well. They're at an angle, so they're not quite full horizontal and not quite vertical. Usually end up somewhere around here, so you do get some of that deltoid engagement. And then with the kettlebell floor press, if you turn it into a quarter get up, you can also get some more deltoids and shoulder into it. So I'll just go ahead and get right into the kettlebell floor press right here. Using a kettlebell. The kettlebell floor press is a horizontal press, so you're lying on the ground. One of the first things I talk about is foot placement. Personally, I feel better with my soles flat on the ground. Some people might like their feet out like this, but I prefer this. Just as if you're going to do a Turkish get-up, you do the baby pickup, so you roll into it and keep it close to you. Now, if you're doing just the press, you can have one hand out here, and full range of motion will be sort of thumbs to chest, wrist to ribs, palms to pit. So my elbow's touching the ground and it's sort of tucked in a modified rack position, and I just press out all the way with control, come back down. Ensure that your clients know about the spear grip or the overhead grip position for kettlebells, because you don't want them to be holding it with their thumb over their head. So you can just press out just like that, okay? Do X amount on one side, then you can bring it over to the other side like this, same thing. Do your baby pickup, and then just press out. So this is a good way to get some horizontal pressing. This strength will carry over to your press ups. Now, if you do want to get a little bit more shoulder and overhead position, you can do what's called a quarter get up. And a quarter get up is one part of a Turkish get up. I like this variation a lot because it gets some shoulder rotation and it's good for increasing range of motion and stability. So you do a normal press like so, and then you do the first part of your Turkish get up where you come up to here, and that is the whole movement right there. It just gets a little bit more shoulder rotation into it, and it's the interplay of moving from here to here that's going to start strengthening your shoulder in different angles. So that's quite a nice variation, and it's not nearly as complicated as a full Turkish get up. So option number one, floor press. Okay, so we just finished talking about the kettlebell floor press, and the reason the kettlebell floor press works in a way that sometimes the overhead press won't work is because most people, especially men, but a lot of women, are going to be stronger here in their pectoral muscles than they are going to be up here in their deltoids. So the kettlebell floor press, because it recruits your pecs more because it's a horizontal press, it's going to be a stronger movement for a lot of people. So this is an example of sort of scaling by changing the anatomic or the muscle groups. So by changing to a slightly different muscle group, but still hitting the same region, you can get a lot of benefits. And then if you build up strength in one, it will have some carryover to the other. The two next variations I'm going to show you aren't about muscle groups. What we're doing is we're changing the levers or the resistance curve on the movement. So the first one I'm going to talk about is the pendulum press, which is this picture right here. And the pendulum press has an interesting resistance curve. So you hang it from something. You see when it's hanging straight down, you're not going to have a lot of resistance there. But as you push the kettlebell further and further away from that center point, from that axis, and it approaches horizontal, the weight's going to get heavier and heavier. Now that might not make a lot of sense, so I'll go ahead and stand up and show you what I'm talking about. So for the pendulum press, you might want to come over here. All you have to do is just hang a kettlebell off of something. You don't need anything fancy. I just used a bit of a suspension trainer here, and I have a carabiner. Roughly, you just want something so it's roughly around your armpit, shoulder level. It doesn't need to be exact because you can adjust it on the fly. And if I stand far away from it, so if I stand far away from right here, you can see that actually it's very much like a horizontal press. This is really easy. I'm just swinging it back and forth. There's not really much resistance. But if I walk close up to it, and I recommend staggering your legs, so whichever leg you're pressing with might be more comfortable as the back leg, and then your opposite leg can go forward a little bit. And now you see if I push, okay, it's actually an angled press. And as I push closer and closer to vertical, the more challenging it's going to be. So if I take another step now and really get into it, you can see it's almost a vertical press at this point. So this is a nice movement to do maybe in some kind of circuit because it's a bit of a pain to set up. It's not huge, but it does allow clients who normally would have trouble pressing, say, like an 8, all of a sudden now they can press an 8 for reps. So it's a nice way to get some extra strength training in. And then the same thing on the other side. You probably want to go in the other direction. Come through here, get really close to it. So right now I'm standing so close I have a bit of a stretch, and then I can just push that out. So you can see if you set up 2 of these in a circuit, it'd be a nice way to get some pressing in a way that normally wouldn't be possible for your clients. So that's the pendulum press. Okay, so another example of mechanical scaling or leverage scaling is some variation of the log press. So the log press, the angled press, the landmine press, etc. And these use a more traditional axis. So normally what you'll do is you'll either use the weight of the log or you'll wedge it into a corner, and then you'll just press it up. And in this case, the log is going to be heaviest as it's horizontal, and as it approaches vertical, it'll become lighter. So this is the exact opposite resistance curve of the pendulum press. So they're sort of complementary. The pendulum press, as you press it higher and more vertical, it gets more difficult. This one, as you press it higher and more vertical, it gets easier. So it does mean that this one will favor tall people, because tall people, it's always going to be relatively lighter. And it means if you want to make it more challenging, you can come down lower. So there's lots of ways to do this. I'm going to show you 2 variations. The first one is just with this little log. Keep in mind that logs will get lighter as they age. So when you first cut the log, it might be really heavy, but after a year or a really dry summer, it'll be much, much lighter. My favorite variation of this is a kneeling or half kneeling variation. So essentially coming down to a lunge, getting this up. You want to get up close to it, just like you do with the pendulum press. So you want it to be close to you here. And you just press out. And you can see this is pretty easy for me. For a smaller client, that might be challenging. But it is a nice way to get some pressing in. And if you angle yourself forward, you can actually get it. So you're doing a pretty good approximation of a vertical press. So that's going to be a little bit too easy. So we can come up to a bigger log over here. Whenever you have a log, you're always going to have the skinny side and the thick side. So the skinny side, if it's the one closest to you, this will be a little bit easier. If I wanted to make it more challenging, I could flip it around and move the heavy side. You can do the same variation here. So if I pick this up and I sort of get close to it. Okay, that's a bit more challenging for me. And that's quite a nice movement. And again, you can adjust the angle. If I got a little bit further away, it could be more of an angled press, but that's pretty good. And then probably not for right now, but in the future, you can do other variations of this. So if you're standing, you can do a variation where you clean it and then press it with one hand, or clean it and press it with two hands. This is more of a future movement. But once you get this, all you need is a few logs and you can get a really nice full body explosive movement out of it.